One morning over breakfast, my children asked me, "Dad, are we rich?" Does this happen to you? It might. It's a powerful question and a surprisingly difficult one to answer. I looked at our breakfast table and I said, well, there are just enough bread rolls for everyone. We have enough, but that's not the same as being rich. Imagine someone puts more bread rolls in front of your door than you can eat every day. The richest 1% would need a shovel, and the billionaires, they would need a truck every day. It was a decent metaphor for children, and they understood two things. Too little is a problem, but too much can be a burden too. But there's one thing I really got wrong about it. Bread goes stale if you don't eat it. Money doesn't. And that, as I've come to learn, is where the problem starts. We live in the wealthiest moment in human history. In my country, Germany alone, we sit on 8 trillion euro in liquid private wealth. And yet, we're being told we can't afford to solve climate change, education inequality, or global poverty? It's a lie. And it's a lie being told often by people who benefit from money staying exactly where it is. And to understand why this is such an existential problem, let's look at some numbers. The Red Cross estimates that the cost of doing nothing about climate change will make solutions 3 to 5 times more expensive in only 10 years. The Climate Policy Initiative calculates that the cost of inaction on climate change would exceed $1,266 trillion. That's $1.3 quadrillion by 2100, 10 times global GDP. Climate change hits the poor much earlier and harder, so preventing it is a moral imperative, but it's also simply the best deal in economic history for everyone. You cannot buy clean air, quiet neighbors, or free speech for yourself. So why aren't we doing it? You know what a detective does in a crime novel? Follows the money. So let's do some of that, okay? Like I did. When I was little, we moved from a small remote island to a suburb near Europe's banking headquarters, and suddenly wealth was all around me. I studied at private universities, took a fancy city job in London, and then shifted my work to the non-profit sector, raising millions for good causes. Eventually, I ended up leading Germany's and Europe's philanthropy networks. I've sat across from hundreds of wealth holders. And what I found surprised me. Even those who want to give significantly more often can't. Why? Because their money is locked up. And we all need to understand how and why if we want to have an informed conversation about change. So, first, in developed economies like Germany, most of the wealth is inherited. And in many wealth-holding families, there's a kind of family dogma. It goes a little bit like this. It's not really your wealth. You're just preserving it for the next generation. So in fact, let's do a little experiment. Who here in the audience would like to inherit some wealth? Before I give it to you, let me tell you who need to pass it on in 30 years with interest. How do you feel now? Do you feel you can do with it what you think is right? Do you feel rich? Do you feel it's yours? Or do you feel like the Brad Pitt character in Fight Club, the things you own end up owning you? That brings us to 2. The bankers, tax advisors, family officers, the gatekeepers, their job and their financial incentive is to protect and grow money and not to invest it for the good of others or to help you give it away. In fact, there are many next-generation wealth holders who have signed over control to the money managers, only receive monthly allowances, and cannot talk about their finances. How does that work? That brings us to 3. The legal instruments that keep money locked up. Let's follow the money to the origins of that, the medieval fight club, the Christian Crusades. If a king wanted to make land-owning men go to the Holy Land for years, he would need to guarantee that their title and land would still be theirs upon their return, and that no children added to the family by other men could claim an inheritance. That is how the trust was born. The government guarantee that ties money to the will of its owner even after his death. Today, trusts are everywhere. They're the world's most successful instrument to protect dynastic, mostly patriarchal wealth. At around the same time, in monasteries, a similar legal form emerged, the foundation. Originally to protect manuscripts, relics, treasures of the church from greedy lords and unstable kingdoms. A foundation owns itself. It ties assets to a purpose forever. The idea is genius. If foundations didn't exist, we'd have to invent them. But these instruments have become part of a global wealth defense industry because they keep money locked up and cloaked in secrecy, tax privileges, and very confusing terminology. We think foundations are supposed to organize generosity. Well, let's follow the money. In Germany, there are 25,000 foundations with anywhere between 100 and 200 billion euro in endowments. How much comes out every year? That's given away, about 1%. So you can see, yes, foundations are a very good way to protect assets. Assets worth protecting in perpetuity. They are not designed to give away money for urgent causes. Or to return to my improvised metaphor, if the endowments were bread rolls, only breadcrumbs ever leave the property. And worse, they're often invested in harmful industries, because that is what happens when you invest with low risk for market returns, as foundations often have to do. And it's all tax-free as long as breadcrumbs are given to charity. I would argue that many foundations, and especially starting new ones, mostly benefit tax advisors, bankers, and lawyers. So, how about what I said earlier, the fact that unlike bread, money doesn't go bad? I think that's wrong. Don't you agree? Money does go bad when it's locked away in this way. And from talking to many people interested in giving away more, I know this is partly why they've all but stopped giving to foundations. Wherever I look, foundation endowments grow much slower than private wealth. In Germany, there's a 30 billion euro gap of philanthropic potential. So, wealth, to summarize, wealth isn't the problem. Locking it away is. Whether it's 1, through family dogma, 2, the financial gatekeepers, or 3, the legal code of trusts and foundations. Okay, I think I know what you're thinking now. Why don't we tax it away and let government do it? Yeah. Okay. So whatever your opinion on taxes, and I think most, including me, would agree that a fair tax system would not tax income on labor higher than on large inheritances. But whatever your opinion on taxes, much higher wealth taxes would require an international coordination that seems distant. And aside from the fact that governments cannot get to the capital already locked up in the fortresses of legal code, public funding alone isn't what we need, because governments are bound by election cycles. They rarely take bold long-term risks, the kind required to fund the breakthroughs or to protect marginalized communities, sometimes from government itself. And with an increase in populism, relying on only government funding seems very risky indeed. The fact is we need more funding from more different sources, public, private, philanthropic. We need more people to engage with wealth, not after the next election or the next election. And that is where all of us come in. Because the 21st century knows not only government action to transform markets, but another more powerful mechanism. Remember how bookselling changed? Or city transport? Or the hotel industry? It's by using the internet to bring down costs, replace gatekeepers, and allowing everyone to play. Finance followed, neo-brokers, digital wallets, but giving, it's still stuck in the past. So, what would modern giving look like? This is the mission I'm on. Digital foundations. What if anyone could start one with any amount of money on their phone? It's already happening. Individuals start digital foundations to organize their giving, experts to help others fund their recommendations, business leaders for their impact and leadership, groups for shared causes, or parents for their kids. With no fee barrier and the same tax deduction as a donation. So why, you might ask, would I need a digital foundation if I only want to give a donation to a charity? You don't. But the moment you want to do more, you do. Strategic giving, impact investing, fundraising. You don't need to be wealthy to create impact. You just need a better financial instrument. No matter how much or how little you have to give. In fact, 1% is enough to change the game. What if each of us just gave 1% of our income? In fact, most people with small and medium incomes already do. Or 1% of our wealth. In Germany alone, this would mobilize 100 billion euro per year. That's a 10-fold increase over current levels of giving. Just smart modern generosity. And here's the thing, you're not giving away without return. In fact, you're buying something with an irresistible value. It makes you happier, it prevents massive future costs, and it creates a movement, because the moment you make giving visible and social, it spreads. Research is very clear. Generous societies are more resilient, more trustful, more joyful. We all want to live in one of those. So how do we evolve from here to there? Today, we're stuck in a blame game. We are stuck in a blame game debating who the rich are and how government can tax them, and the money is stuck. Tomorrow, everyone can be a philanthropist. Everyone can be an impact investor, everyone an impact influencer. It starts with 1%. It doesn't have to end there. It starts with you, and it will certainly not end there. So, if my children asked me again, Dad, are we rich? Here's what I would tell them today. Yes, we are rich, because we own our money, it doesn't own us. We can invest it without harming the planet. We can give it away to fund great ideas, and we can inspire others to do it. And you can too. You can decide to be a philanthropist. Why not now? It only takes 5 minutes. So let me leave you with this simple question. What will you call your foundation? Thank you very much.